The envelope was cream-colored, thick with expensive texture, and embossed with gold lettering. It arrived on a rainy Tuesday morning at Clara Ellison's minimalist apartment in Chicago, a stark contrast to the luxurious announcement it carried. Clara read the contents with a dry smirk. The 47th Annual Ellison Family Gathering, held at the Solstice Estate in Aspen, Colorado. To anyone else, it would seem like a generous invitation to a weekend of fine dining, luxury, and family bonding. To Clara, it was a reminder of everything she had been pushed away from. Her last name was Ellison, yes, but in her family's eyes, she had forfeited her right to belong when she refused to join Ellison & Bray, the multi-billion-dollar law firm helmed by her grandfather and now, her father. At 21, Clara left law school halfway through her second year and announced she was moving to Detroit to open a wellness retreat. The family had scoffed. A glorified spa, her uncle had muttered at the last family dinner she attended. That was 9 years ago. Now 30, Clara had rebuilt her identity, professionally, socially, and even legally. Clara Dane was the name most people knew. Founder and CEO of Dane Sanctuaries, a chain of ultra-luxury wellness resorts known for cutting-edge holistic health programs, architectural serenity, and waiting lists that stretched for months. But her family had never acknowledged her success. To them, Clara was still the wayward girl who traded power suits for yoga pants and meditation beads. She was considering tossing the invitation when her phone buzzed. The name made her freeze. Victoria Ellison. Her cousin. Predictable. Clara. Victoria's voice was too bright. You got the invite, right? I did, Clara replied coolly. Well, just so you know, this year's event is extremely curated. The Solstice Estate is next level. We're talking senators, tech CEOs, global investors. It's not really the place for, startups and stuff. Clara leaned back in her plush designer office chair, the skyline of downtown Chicago shimmering behind her. If Victoria only knew that the Solstice Estate was her latest acquisition, finalized just 6 weeks ago. The ink on the contracts was barely dry. And who chose the venue? Clara asked, suppressing a laugh. Grandpa let me pick it. Victoria chirped. I had to pull so many strings. Solstice has this ultra-exclusive booking process. I mean, Dane Sanctuaries wouldn't even return my assistant's call. Clara grinned. How did you manage to book it then? Victoria sighed dramatically. I pulled the Ellison name. That worked like a charm. I guess some people still understand prestige. I see, Clara murmured. Anyway, Victoria continued, maybe next year you'll be in a position to join. Once your business, grows. For now, enjoy your boutique yoga thing. The call ended with a click and a cackle. Clara sat motionless, then laughed out loud. The Solstice Estate was her crown jewel. A sanctuary designed with alpine wood, geothermal energy systems, and panoramic views of snow-capped mountains. She hadn't made it public yet, it was still branded under the previous management until the unveiling next week. But her family had accidentally planned their latest reunion in a temple she built. Her assistant, Ezra, walked in. Just got the final documents on Solstice. We're ready for the relaunch announcement, but we're postponing it, Clara said. Ezra blinked. Postponing? Why? Because we're going to host a family gathering first. He raised an eyebrow. Your family? The ones who made fun of your juice bar idea and called you a hippie dropout? Clara nodded. Yes. And I want full control. Schedule everything. Adjust the guest list formatting, lighting, sent profiles in the lobby, everything. Ezra's grin spread slowly. You're going to reveal it at the reunion? I am, Clara said, opening her laptop. But not to show off. Just to remind them what happens when you overlook someone. Clara spent the next week finalizing every aspect of the weekend. She oversaw the custom aromatherapy blend released through the lobby diffusers, reviewed the seasonal plant-based menu crafted by Michelin-starred chefs, and selected ambient soundscapes designed to lower blood pressure within the first 10 minutes of arrival. She ensured that every guest suite bore the touch of curated luxury, except for one. Victoria's suite was deliberately reassigned last minute to a standard twin, the same room tier she once mocked Clara for offering at her first retreat. Not for revenge, just for balance. The night before the reunion, Clara stood in the atrium of Solstice, watching her team polish the marble floors under the vast glass ceiling, the stars of the mountain sky blinking through. She felt no nerves, no bitterness. Only calm. She wasn't crashing the party. She was hosting it. Tomorrow, the Ellisons would walk into a sanctuary built by the very person they disowned, and she would greet them, not as the estranged daughter, but as the architect of everything they believed she could never achieve. After Clara finalized the Aspen property, Solstice Estate, she flew back to Detroit one last time. She wanted to visit the Haven, the place where everything began. The original property had been bought out years ago by one of her earliest investors and transformed into a community-funded wellness hub. It still bore the original wood sign, carved by Clara with her own hands, "You are allowed to heal here." She walked the familiar halls, now gleaming and welcoming, but filled with traces of the old struggle, the uneven corners of the brick, the creaky stair near the meditation loft, the herbal garden she had once watered with a kitchen measuring cup. The woman at the front desk looked up with wide eyes. "Wait. Are you?" Clara just smiled. "I was here a long time ago." She didn't want applause. She wanted grounding. It was easy to lose sight of herself now, flying private, speaking at global summits, rubbing shoulders with wellness influencers and thought leaders. But she never wanted to become what her family was, obsessed with image, blind to purpose. Clara's ascent wasn't just about success, it was about intention. Every day in sanctuary property followed her vision of full circle healing. That meant employee wellness programs, sustainable sourcing, emotional support training for staff, and retreats that actually changed people's lives. Still, even with all the accolades and international praise, she'd never told her family the truth. Her mother once reached out after seeing an article about a retreat in Morocco that seemed familiar. Clara had dodged the conversation. It wasn't about hiding, it was about timing. And now the time had come. Back in Chicago, Ezra watched her pack her luggage with quiet amusement. "You're dressing like a guest?" he asked. "I'm dressing like myself," Clara replied. "If they expect a spa employee, that's what they'll see. Let them look down, until they have to look up." He handed her a slim leather folder. "The financials for Solstice. You want them printed and distributed at the event?" Clara paused, then nodded. "Just to a select few. Let the story circulate slowly." Ezra smirked. "You're kind of terrifying when you're calm." "Good," she said. "Let them underestimate me." As she boarded her flight to Aspen, Clara reflected on the symbolism of it all. She had always loved mountains. They didn't ask for attention. They didn't explain themselves. They simply rose. And people either adjusted to their presence, or struggled to climb. 2 days before the reunion, Clara arrived quietly at Solstice, entering through a private side path meant for senior staff. The property shimmered under a blanket of snow, its wooden structures glowing with warm interior light and alpine elegance. Guests would never see the geothermal water system beneath the soil, or the climate-controlled ventilation that harmonized with the terrain. But she did. She visited every suite personally. Checked the scents, each tailored to its occupant using a profile-based selection algorithm she'd helped develop. She walked the reflection gardens, checked the hot stone paths, and tested the lighting ambience at sunset. This wasn't just a retreat. It was a message. And tomorrow, her family would receive it. Later that evening, as the sky turned indigo and the pines whispered with the wind, Clara sat with the head chef, Mira, a fierce, gentle woman who once ran a refugee kitchen in Istanbul. "They won't recognize you," Mira said, chopping herbs with swift precision. "I'm counting on it," Clara said. Mira looked up. "And if they still don't see?" Clara stirred her tea. "Then at least I'll know I didn't stay silent." "Will it be dramatic?" Mira asked, grinning. "No," Clara replied. "It'll be clear." The morning of the reunion arrived like a performance waiting for its curtain. Staff bustled in quiet rhythm, crystal glasses were lined, pathways salted, fire pits lit. The air hummed with serene control. At 11 a.m., the first wave of Ellisons arrived, stepping out of private SUVs wrapped in Canada Goose and cashmere. They commented on the architecture, the nice vibes, and the untouched snow. They complimented Victoria's incredible connections and how she really outdid herself this year. Victoria, of course, basked in it all. "The spa menu was designed for our family's lifestyle," she said to an uncle. "I made sure to request the executive package." Clara, watching from her office via discreet security feeds, nearly snorted her tea. "You requested something already built," she whispered. One by one, the family assembled. Her father in his signature gray overcoat. Her mother in pearls and disdain. Her twin brothers, both still smug from winning some legal case last quarter. The whole chorus. And none of them noticed the woman behind it all. Not yet. But they would. It was 6:40 p.m. Soft snow fell across the Solstice Estate, dusting the curved rooftops and flickering lanterns that line the cobblestone walkways. Inside the grand hearth room, a soaring hall with exposed timber beams and a panoramic view of the white-capped mountains, the Ellison reunion was in full swing. String quartet melodies floated through the air, blending with the murmur of high-end small talk and the occasional burst of laughter. Champagne flutes clinked. Waiters passed trays of saffron crostini and truffle dumplings. The Ellisons were in their element, surrounded by wealth, exclusivity, and a sense of inherited superiority. Victoria floated through the crowd like a hostess born of marble and privilege. "We had to call in so many favors to book this place," she told her grandfather, loud enough for the surrounding guests to hear. "I mean, Dane Sanctuaries is practically impossible to reach. I had to convince the concierge that this was a legacy family event." Her grandfather nodded, vaguely impressed. "Seems you've inherited some of the Ellison negotiating instincts." Clara stood in the back, wearing a simple full-length charcoal-wrapped dress, her hair tied in a sleek bun. No jewelry. No name tag. Just a clipboard in hand, blending in like a manager, not a mogul. From behind a pillar, she watched them, her cousins posing for group selfies, her mother pretending to be charmed by a venture capitalist, her father standing with the same legal partners who had laughed when she launched her first retreat. "Final checks are complete," whispered Ezra, who had slipped in beside her unnoticed. "The cue is yours." Clara took a breath. "Do it." At exactly 7:15 p.m., the music shifted subtly, and the lights dimmed just a touch, not enough to cause alarm, but enough to silence the room. The large curved digital screen above the fireplace flickered to life. First, the Solstice logo appeared, a minimal white lotus over a golden sunrise. Then, a sentence. "Healing begins with clarity." The guests turned curiously toward the screen, murmuring. Victoria stepped forward, confused. "Wait, what is this?" Then the screen shifted again. "Welcome to Solstice Estate, owned and operated by Clara Dane, founder and CEO of Dane Sanctuaries." Silence. Dead, echoing silence. Glasses froze midair. Heads snapped. Victoria's mouth fell open as if she'd swallowed a wasp. Her father stared at the screen, blinking as if trying to correct his vision. And then, finally, from the back of the room, Clara stepped forward. Her heels clicked softly against the stone floor. Calm. Graceful. Impossibly composed. Someone gasped. Another muttered, "Is that?" Clara stopped a few feet from the center of the room, letting the silence expand. Then she spoke. "Good evening, Ellison family. And welcome. To my home." A collective inhale swept the room. "Clara?" Her mother finally croaked. Clara turned her gaze to her. "Still me. Though most of you haven't used that name in years. These days, most people know me as Clara Dane. But to all of you, I'm still the girl who threw away her future to teach breathing exercises, right?" A ripple of nervous laughter. Eyes darted to Victoria, who looked like she wanted to vanish into her Valentino gown. Clara continued. "I wasn't invited tonight. But I decided to come anyway. After all, you're all guests at a place I built. So technically, I'm hosting." She walked forward, slow and steady, as the screen shifted again behind her, this time showcasing glowing images of her global sanctuaries, rain-kissed bamboo villas in Bali, a mountaintop glass pavilion in Switzerland, sunlit desert domes in Arizona. "I started with a single property in Detroit. No help. No loans. Just vision, grit, and the belief that healing environments didn't have to be exclusive. Ironically, I was excluded from this family while creating one of the most respected wellness brands in the world. More shifting in the room. More flushed cheeks. Her father looked down at his shoes. I built this estate for people who need silence to listen, nature to remember, and space to grow. Seems fitting, doesn't it? Because tonight, this space is yours. But the story is mine. Victoria found her voice. We didn't know, she stammered. No one told us. You never asked, Clara said, gentle but firm. You never cared to look past your assumptions. That I was weak. Naive. Foolish for walking away from the firm. She turned to face her grandfather. You said I would end up working in a spa. And I did. I cleaned floors. Carried towels. Ran healing sessions. And eventually, I owned every room I entered. The air was heavy now, not with shame, but realization. Clara nodded at Ezra. He handed out black envelopes to key family members. Inside, she said, you'll find a copy of our guest invoice for tonight's event. Since this was booked under a private name, and marked as premium custom, the cost reflects the exclusivity. Victoria tore open hers, scanning the details. Her face paled. This is 60% above the listed rate. Clara smiled. Yes. Customization charges. Emotional tax included. A few snickers burst from the younger cousins. And before anyone panics, Clara added, I won't be collecting. This isn't about money. I just wanted you to see the value of what you dismissed. A pause. Then her father finally stepped forward. I was wrong, he said, voice thick with something not quite apology, but close. We didn't know you were doing this well. Clara looked at him for a long moment. You didn't want to know. He dropped his eyes again. I don't need your approval, Clara said softly. I never did. But I do want one thing. Everyone looked up. I want this to be the last time any of you confuse wealth with wisdom. Status with substance. Because what I've built came from everything you said would never work. Behind her, the screen lit up with one final message. Legacy isn't inherited. It's built. Then the lights returned. The music resumed. The room exhaled. Clara stepped aside, allowing the staff to begin their elegant retreat tours. Guests began to shuffle, whisper, and rethink every assumption they'd brought with them. As for Clara, she walked away from the hearth and toward the snowy terrace outside, feeling something she hadn't in years. Weightless. Clara stood on the balcony of the Solstice Estate, her breath rising in soft clouds against the chill of the alpine night. Below her, the glittering snow reflected the muted glow of lanterns that lined the estate's garden paths, now echoing with hushed voices. The soft murmur of her family's surprise, their discomfort, their slow unraveling of years-long assumptions, carried upward like wind through the trees. Inside, the reunion had shifted. Gone was the cocky buzz of champagne-fueled small talk. In its place was something quieter, more fragile. Conversations now took place in corners, not center stage. Aunts who had once rolled their eyes at Clara's healing retreat nonsense now clutched black envelopes with trembling hands. Uncles reread the event invoice like it held the secret to her entire empire. But Clara didn't need to see it. She felt it. And not with smug satisfaction, but with something more sobering. It was never about the money. It was about acknowledgement. Should I call the chef? Ezra asked quietly, stepping beside her. The tasting course can be delayed if you want a break. Clara shook her head. No. Let it run. Let them experience the place properly. Maybe for the first time in their lives, they'll actually sit with their thoughts. Ezra chuckled. You built a sanctuary to dismantle egos. That's kind of poetic. Clara didn't smile. I didn't build it for them. Back inside, the estate's private dining room had been reconfigured into an intimate tasting hall, low candlelight, local stoneware plates, hand-forged centerpiece arrangements of wintergreens and berries. Guests took their seats in subdued silence, the earlier arrogance diluted by the weight of reality. Clara entered last. No fanfare. No grand re-entry. Just quiet presence. She didn't sit at the head of the table. She took a spot near the middle, between her mother and her younger cousin Isla, who had once cried from anxiety during an Ellis and debate dinner and been told by Victoria to grow a spine. Isla looked at Clara like she'd seen her sprout wings. "I didn't know it was you," she whispered. "I saw your brand once in a wellness magazine. I thought maybe, but..." Clara placed a gentle hand on her cousin's. "You're not the only one who doubted." Across the table, her father cleared his throat. "Clara," he began, every syllable heavy with effort. "I owe you an apology." Clara looked up, calmly. "For what exactly?" He blinked, caught off guard by her directness. "For not believing in you. For not seeing this coming." "That's not really an apology," she replied. "That's an admission of shock. There's a difference." His jaw clenched slightly. Not in anger, more like wounded pride. "Then I apologize," he said again, slower this time. "For belittling your choices. For measuring your worth through my lens." Clara studied him. Her father had always been a fortress, sharp suits, sharper judgments, a man who could gut a courtroom opponent with a single raised brow. And yet now, under the ambient candlelight of a sanctuary he didn't know she built, he looked small. "Thank you," she said at last. "That's all I ever wanted. For you to see that I was never lost. Just walking a different road." He nodded, slowly. A crack in the stone. Beside her, her mother finally spoke. "You changed your name. I needed to. But you didn't need to leave us." Clara turned to her, calm but resolute. "I didn't leave you. I left the version of myself you all demanded I be. The one who smiled through condescension. The one who pretended courtroom victories meant more than quiet healing." Her mother said nothing. Just sipped her wine. After dinner, the family scattered into smaller clusters across the estate. Some explored the spa facilities. Others wandered the Zen gardens, now softly lit by floating paper lanterns. Clara watched from the main lounge, seated by the fire with a mug of herbal tea, when Victoria approached. She walked slowly, the swagger gone. Her heels clicked less confidently on the stone floor. "Clara." Clara looked up. "Hi, Vicky." Victoria grimaced. "No one calls me that anymore." Clara raised an eyebrow. "Really? You didn't like how it felt to be made small?" Victoria sat across from her. She looked down for a long time before saying, "I was cruel to you. For years. Not just dismissive. Mean. Competitive. I don't even know why." Clara folded her hands. "Because I made different choices. And that made you insecure." Victoria flinched. "Probably." Silence. "You really own all this?" Victoria asked finally. "Not just this property, but the whole Dane Sanctuaries thing?" Clara nodded. "And you, what, run it all yourself?" "I have a team. But I built it. Every contract, every design, every experience." Victoria rubbed her temples. "And I thought I was doing something impressive by booking a venue." Clara offered no venom, just clarity. "There's a difference between reserving a table and setting it." Victoria looked up, eyes shimmering. "I'm sorry. I really am." For the first time, Clara smiled, not wide, not triumphant, but warm. "Thank you." Victoria hesitated. "Can I ask something?" "Sure. Do you think someone like me could build something like this?" Clara's answer was immediate. "Only if you're willing to get your hands dirty." That night, Clara took a slow walk through the estate grounds. She passed the onsen pools where her cousins were still whispering about her, the tea lounge where her grandfather stared at the wall like he was reconsidering his entire legacy, and the mirrored yoga atrium where her aunt was lying on the floor, breathing deeply, eyes closed. She didn't need to interrupt any of them. She already had. Ezra met her at the back patio as she returned to the chalet. "Quite a night," he said. Clara nodded. "And not over." "Meaning?" She looked up at the stars. "They still don't know about Tokyo. Or the Maldives expansion." Ezra chuckled. "Saving that for next year's reunion?" Clara grinned. "Only if they earn the invite." The following morning, as dawn cracked open over the snow-draped peaks, Clara stood barefoot in the meditation hall at Solstice Estate. The glass walls shimmered with the gold and pink of sunrise, casting reflections on the polished wooden floor. The silence was complete, not hollow, but full. Full of what had happened. Full of what had finally been said. Last night had been a reckoning. Not just for her family, but for Clara herself. She had spent so long building, proving, perfecting, perhaps too afraid that if she paused, the echo of their doubt would catch up with her. But as the sun rose over her sanctuary, she no longer felt like she was running. She was standing still. And they had finally seen her. At 9 a.m., she strolled through the main dining atrium where breakfast was served. Guests sat quietly, some talking in low voices, others simply watching the snow fall outside as they sipped warm tea. The atmosphere had shifted. The tone of the reunion was no longer showy or smug. It had softened. It had matured. Her father sat alone at a corner table, staring into a cup of black coffee like it held the answers he'd spent a career searching for. She approached. "Morning," she said simply. He looked up, tired but clearer. "Clara." There was weight in the way he said it. No disappointment, no judgment, just her name, finally spoken without a wince. "I didn't sleep much," he admitted. "Too much chamomile tea?" she offered lightly. He gave a tired chuckle. "Too many thoughts." A pause. "I saw the footage on the screens," he continued. "The properties. The people. You've done something incredible." Clara nodded, not to be proud, but to acknowledge the truth of it. "I don't understand all of it," he admitted. "The wellness industry. The architecture. The silence. But I understand what it takes to build something from nothing." His voice lowered. "And I finally see how wrong I was. Not just in dismissing your vision, but in failing to understand that leadership looks different now." Clara's heart softened. This man, who once believed power came only in courtrooms and corner offices, was now grappling with the reality that a daughter he had disowned had redefined it all, on her own terms. "I appreciate that," she said. "And I know it wasn't easy to say." He glanced around. "I don't think anyone here knows how to respond to you now. You've become something uncontainable." Clara smiled. "Good. I was never meant to be boxed in." He looked at her, studying her face the way a father should, like trying to trace a line from the child he once knew to the woman standing before him. "Will you forgive me?" he asked. Clara took a long breath, letting the moment rest before answering. "I already did," she said. "A long time ago. I just needed you to catch up." He blinked, and for the first time in years, reached for her hand. She let him hold it. Not because he needed it, but because she didn't anymore. Later that afternoon, Clara gathered with a smaller group in the sunroom, the estate's most intimate lounge with low seating, indoor plants, and panoramic views of the frozen lake. It wasn't official, not part of the reunion schedule. But people came. Her aunt, who had always criticized her choices, now asked, "How did you start all this without help?" Her cousin Matthew, the one who used to joke about her being the family dropout, asked, "Would you consider investing in my fiancé's startup? She's building mental health apps." Even her mother, who had once said, "Don't come to family events if you're going to dress like you just came from a yoga retreat," now leaned in and whispered, "You looked elegant last night." Graceful. Clara listened. Replied when needed. But mostly, she let the space speak for itself. Solstice had become her quiet advocate. Not just a business. A boundary. A biography. That evening, Ezra met her in the main suite where she was packing to leave. "Final invoices processed," he said, flipping his tablet shut. "Staff gratuities delivered. We even got 3 pre-bookings from family members for private retreats." Clara raised an eyebrow. "Seriously?" He grinned. "Apparently, Aunt Meredith wants to reconnect with her inner stillness." Clara laughed for the first time in 2 days. "Well, she's got a long walk ahead of her." Ezra handed her a sealed envelope. "One more thing. Tokyo expansion contract. They're ready." Clara turned the envelope in her hands. "They have no idea how big this is going to get, do they?" Ezra tilted his head. "Does that matter?" She thought for a second. Then placed the envelope down. "No," she said. "It doesn't." Because the truth was, she didn't build Dane sanctuaries to prove anything anymore. She built it because she believed in the power of space. Of silence. Of sovereignty. Outside, snow began to fall again, softly and steadily. As she stepped into her private transport, her phone buzzed. A message from Victoria. "Your story changed something in me. Thank you. Breakfast next week? My treat. At your place. Clara replied with a single line. Only if you make the reservation like everyone else. Another message popped up. This one from her younger cousin Isla. I want to intern. We'll clean floors, do admin, whatever. I want to learn how to build something real. Clara smiled. Let's talk soon, she replied. It all starts with listening. As the car pulled away from Solstice, winding down the snow-covered path, Clara looked back one last time. Not out of longing. Not even to admire the architecture she once obsessed over. But as a quiet nod to the version of herself who once stood at the edge of belief, wondering if any of this would ever be enough. It was. More than enough. Because legacy, she now understood, wasn't carved into marble or stitched into a crest. It was lived. Earned. And most of all, chosen.